Okay, so let's press forward. The best way to introduce the definition of the three parts of speech is to grab onto the harf and understand that one first. Okay, this is the single point within this topic, and you can label it. It's called Introducing the Parts of Speech in Arabic. That's the name of the topic. In the previous video, we gave you three topics. Introducing the comprehensiveness of the Arabic language at the word level. That was one topic. Introducing sarf, along with its definition and its two major areas. And the third was the table layout. Okay, which also included the importance of tables, why we have them, why we need them. Okay, without filling the slots. In this presentation, we're mapping the language, which is the larger topic that we'll spend the majority of the session on. Within this, we have the introduction of the parts of speech. Okay, the best way to do it is to begin with the English parts of speech and assign them. And then ultimately you want to be able to define them, each one. There is some precise definition. Fi'al, precise definition. Harf, precise definition. So what is defining? Defining is when you take things that belong to the same upper category and note their commonality and note their differences. So the commonality is they're all words and they all indicate on a complete meaning, and they've been assigned and they've been coined and they're not meaningless. So that's and they're single. So that's the commonality. Beyond that, from the three parts of speech in Arabic, the harf one is unique in the sense that it indicates on a meaning in something else. So if you understand what it means to indicate on a meaning in something else, then you can take that piece of information and it will unravel all three of them, because it would be the opposite of that that's contained within the ism and the fi'al, and then you just note the difference between those two and you'd have all three of them, right? Okay, so that from example I gave you a few minutes ago, I think it was sufficient in order to highlight that every harf will indicate on a meaning, because if there's no meaning, then it's muhmal, then we're not even talking about it, it's meaningless. So clearly there's a meaning. The difference is that the harf's meaning is in the surrounding words, it's not in itself. As opposed to tree, when I say tree, it is the tree which has the trunk and is leafy and it grows, so all of that is included within the same word, you see. Origin, on the other hand, is the meaning of from, but it's not from which is the origin, it's the upcoming noun which possesses the attribute of being an origin. And when and, A and D, indicates on gathering, it's not the and that's gathered, it's the zayd and the amr, the surrounding words, which have that meaning of being gathered. You see? Same thing with the word not, which indicates on negation, or the word but. What is but? But is a conjunction in English which indicates on, which deflects attention away from the previous statement and focuses it on the upcoming. So you see, it's the previous statement, it's the upcoming statement which bal indicates meanings on them, so that the speaker is not intending the previous one any longer, but instead the speaker wants to focus the attention on the upcoming. When you say but or however, the word however, yes, is an example of harf because it indicates on affirmation. Affirmation is the meaning which is in the statement that's being affirmed. You see that? So being a tool, being an origin, being a destination, being affirmed, being gathered. You see? So every harf is like that. If you run through the prepositions in English, run through the conjunctions in English, you'll notice that this is a commonality in all of them. And this is what distinguishes the harf from the other two, because both the ism and the fi'l indicate on meanings within themselves. So now we're ready to go ahead and define, and the difference between the ism and the fi'l would obviously be tense, in the sense that ism is not linked to time, whereas the fi'l is linked to time. The fi'l contains a tense. So here's all three of them for you. So ism is the part of speech in Arabic that indicates on a meaning in itself and is not linked to time, like the word tree or the word house. Fi'al is the part of speech in Arabic that indicates on a meaning in itself and is also linked to time, and then that time could be past, present, or future, like the word went indicates on going in the past, goes indicates on going in the present, and will go indicates on going in the future. So we have the act of going, and we also have the time that the going is happening in. So that's, every verb is like that, and the harf has already been spoken about. So let's go ahead now and let's subclassify the ism, the fi'l, and the harf. So what we do now is we spend some time on each of those three. Okay, because they were very broad. The ism was not only noun. The ism was much more than noun. It also included adjectives. So if you're going to speak about the ism and subclassify it, then you can speak about it in consideration of the gender, that every ism needs to have a gender. Based on the gender, it will either be masculine or feminine. Or you can speak about it based on plurality. subclassifying of the ism. It happens in grammar. Every book of grammar will have a section that subclassifies the ism. For our introductory theory, what we'll do is we'll do it once. Okay, and we'll subclassify the ism based on being derived or not being derived. Okay, because this is somewhat relevant to our purpose right now, because we're introducing grammar and morphology deals with derivative, the process of how letters connect together and are vowels on particular configurations of vowels that give us the tense, the voice, and the added connotations. So this can happen in verbs. Actually, it happens in verbs universally. Every verb involves this. Okay, it also happens in isms. So you can have an ism which is constructed, and it involves base letters, and it has a particular vowel configuration. Okay, but then it's a noun. Okay, so when speaking about derivative, one second, just give me a second here. What we're talking about is we're talking about a family of words that all have the same letters. The consonants are the same, because remember in the first video we told you that meanings are created by taking 3 letters from the alphabet and grouping them in groups of 3. Noon, Sad, and Ra, when grouped in that order, give us the meaning of helping, to help. Now what that means is that if it occurs in 100 words, all 100 words would have the meaning of help. But then they'll all be unique and they'll be different. It's the particular configuration of vowels that conveys the base letter meaning in a unique way, that allows for the conveyance of the base letter meaning in a unique way. Now many of those will be verbs. Some of them will be isms. So it will either involve that process or it won't. If it doesn't involve that process at all, then that's called jamid. And that's the one on the far right. A jamid is an ism that does not involve a process of derivation. It wasn't derived from anything and nothing was derived from it. And this is normally what the English people call noun. The majority of nouns like tree, the sun, the moon, the earth, house. Okay, so basically they're just coined and frozen. Jamid literally means frozen. So the word rajul, for example, means man, and that would be an example of a jamid ism because it's not constructed. It was coined. That ra, that jim, and that lam, the earliest Arab people took those 3 letters and assigned it the meaning of man. Same thing for woman, same thing for boy, same thing for girl. Okay, now the rest of them, if you take out the jamids, the rest of them, just pretend there are 100 words that all have the same base letters. From those 100, 1 will be the source. And the other 99 would be considered created from the source, or constructed from the source using the rules of sarf. You see, so sarf talks about masdar and mushtaq, sarf does not talk about jamid. So that's one takeaway from here. Okay, so where do you get the meanings of jamid? You get them from the dictionary. One by one, no process. Isolated. Frozen. Jamid means frozen. Okay, now the other 100, okay, like if I had a whiteboard here, I'd write like 12, 13, 14 examples of words in Arabic that all have the same base letters but are all different. Like nasara, yansuru, unsur, nasrun, nasirun, mansurun. Or take the word sajada, yasjudu, masjid, sujud, sajid, masjud. You see that? Or katib, yaktubu, uktub. You see, uktub means write. It's a command verb. Kataba means wrote. Yaktubu means writes, will write. Katib is writer. And then we have the word kitabah, which means to write. In the prostrating example, the word sujud means prostration. Prostration, verbal noun. Okay, and then the rest of them, many of them will be verbs, and some of them will be nouns. You see? Okay, so from the 100 that may have the same letters, one of them will be the source, and the other 99 will be derived. And from those 99, many of them will be verbs, and some of them will be isms. You see? So now the question is, which one's the source? So the grammar people have identified, okay, through their reasoning process, that the one that's the most basic in terms of meaning, we're going to call that the launching pad. Masdar means launching pad, and that is the verbal noun, what in English they call the gerund, or the infinitive. Okay, like hitting and helping and sitting and standing. I'm talking about the act of hitting and the act of helping and sitting and standing and eating and drinking. That's called the masdar. So it's an actual word. So we're not talking about letters anymore. We're talking about words. So these 3 categories you're seeing underneath isms are actual words that can occur in sentences. The one on the far right is frozen in the sense that it does not involve any process of derivation. The other 2 involve the process. And from the other 2, one of them is the source, and the other is the one that's created from the source. Jamid, masdar, and mushtaq. Hopefully this is pretty clear. Let's go ahead and give you some examples for it. Okay, look underneath. On the right side, underneath Jamid, we have the word Rajul, which means man, and the word Shajara, which means tree. Notice that they're both nouns. They're pure nouns. So there's no hitting or helping or sitting or standing. There's no verb-like meaning in there. There's no action component to it. It's just a noun. It's a reference to an object or a person. So Rajul and Shajara are examples of Jamid. On the other hand, we have Aklun and Shurbun. Aklun means eating and Shurbun means drinking. In other words, the act of eating and the act of drinking. So there's action, there's no tense. Because if you have a tense, then it becomes a verb. You see, and it's not what we're talking about anymore, right? So that's called masdar, launching pad. And then the words that are created from the masdar, we have the word nasir, which means helper. Notice that it has the noon, the sad, and the ra that can be found in dozens of other words. Okay, so it has the family, it's part of the family. So nasir is an example of a word which was created from nasrun. Nasrun means to help, and nasir is helper. Katib is writer, so it comes from a word that means to write. And from which other words are created, like wrote, writes, will write. Masjid is the place of prostration, and it comes from the word prostration, which is the verbal noun. Verbal noun, like laziness or confusion, or hitting or helping or sitting or standing or eating or drinking. So masjid is an example of mushtaq, derived ism.